Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The meeting of the Rockingham Select Board, May 17, 2022. It is 6:25. Little technical issues going on here. There is a Zoom link that's on the agenda. You can get that off the rockbf.org website. Just click on it and it'll get you into the meeting or into the waiting room. That being said, I will call the meeting to order. First order of business is to approve the minutes of May 3, 2022. They are in your packet. I'll take a motion.
Move to approve minutes of May 3rd, 2022. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of May 3rd, 2022. Are there any further discussion, deletions, corrections, omissions, etc.? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Thank you, Rick. If not, maybe you went to sleep over there. Time delay. The next order would be additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting. I have none. Scott?
No, nothing to.
Yeah, that's quick. Public comment on items not on the agenda, 3 minutes per person. Get around, I don't. Do you have something, Walter? No, not yet, okay. You're on the agenda anyway. Okay, let's get down to the manager's report.
Thank you. So just a couple of brief items.
There's Betsy waiting to come in
Oh,
before you go.
Betsy's on this here. Okay, so just a couple of brief items. We had advertised for bids for a replacement of the recycling shed. And so far we have not received any. We had hoped to have some, at least two that we had spoken to in the past, provide us with bids, and at this point we have not received those, so I will follow up with the contractors that we had spoken to previously. Basically, we're just trying to replace that wooden shed with something that's not going to be falling down here in the next year or two, because that shed's in rough shape, and we're using it right now for our food scrap recycling and tires, so it's used pretty heavily. And hopefully we'll get that issue resolved. But at this point, we don't have any bidders on that current project. So we'll follow up with our next meeting to find out exactly why we did not receive any bids from that particular project. The paving project, we're almost completed with all of the prep work on Pleasant Valley. We're working with Basins for dates for when they're going to start milling, and then ultimately we're working with Springfield Paving on dates for paving. So at this point, it'll already be sometime, I'm guessing, after Memorial Day, and I think by contract it would have to be done by 4th of July. We were an early bid on the asphalt this year, so that project should be moving ahead fairly soon. As soon as we find out information, we'll make sure we post information so people are aware. I know it can be somewhat of a pain when they're doing milling and they have to reroute traffic, and it's a short-term inconvenience, but it's still an inconvenience, so we'll make sure we follow up on that as well. That being said, then the rest of the summer for the highway guys, they have a project on Gaskill Hill Road that they have to complete, which will take quite a bit of time and energy, and then the normal painting, as you've already seen around town, crosswalks, stop bars, various improvements in the right-of-way. So projects are moving along. Hopefully we'll see where we stand with some of these bids. I'm a little concerned. We had talked to the school district about possibly doing a joint bid on heating oil, because I think we're all nervous about what our prices might be for next year's heating season. And everybody that we spoke to, none of the vendors have even started to give any kind of guarantees for their purchase prices, because at this point, none of their suppliers will guarantee any pricing that far out. So we'll keep an eye on the market and hopefully let you know when we're going out to bid to see if we can try to secure at least a halfway decent price. But it certainly appears right now that we're going to have a much more expensive heating season for next year for sure. Fingers crossed that maybe we'll see some relief between now and when we actually put our bid into the marketplace. So
So the paving on Pleasant Valley Road, is that gonna be completed, or we're gonna have to short some stuff, or?
We are gonna complete it. Part of the process of what we'll talk about tonight with the highway information as well.
Okay, anybody else? All right, let's move on to the agenda. This item is to review the Bells Falls Trades proposal for 66 Axon Street. There is information in your packet. Anyone from the committee over there want to speak to this? Or shall we just keep up with questions?
Sure, Mike Stack, representing Bell Falls Trades. Nice to be back with you folks again. And I've got a handful of volunteers here that have come. So basically, it's really, if you folks have any questions, I'm happy to answer those questions. The bottom line is, for anything to happen, it's going to take probably a year anyways to plan, design, maximize the educational experience that we can take out of this project. And so we need to get a thumbs up from the town in terms of proceeding with this project. And so if anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to answer those questions.
I guess just a brief update for the board. The contractor was on site this week and is finishing final grade and seeding, so I don't know if he finished today. When I drove by this afternoon, he was still working. I wasn't sure if he was going to get everything done today, but he'll certainly be done this week. So at that point, the site is, at least from our contractual standpoint, complete. So we're really at the point where we can start to move forward with whatever the board wants in terms of property reuse or other types of activity on the site.
Okay, you mentioned in this proposal, there's something about a building that's gonna be erected.
No specific plans yet because we don't have the design. I think the only comment in there was, especially with Chuck Wise on our board, we're going to abide by any zoning requirements or if there's a tool shed in the plan or something like that, that is all that would be,
So
just
we know what kind
off the
of
top
a
of
building, are we looking at one of those metal buildings that's gonna collapse in the snow?
No. I mean,
Yeah, I was hoping we didn't wanna get it, one of those.
no, we, like I said, anything we're gonna do, it's gonna be top shelf and there's not gonna be any corners cut. And again, we're gonna work with the town to make sure that this is what the town wants there, what the schools want there.
Do you have any plans for fencing the area in?
Do we have any, sorry, what?
Plans for fencing the area in? I know, Marcia said that or you told me Marcia has the one around the, up by the village barn, that community garden, just to keep
Marcia can speak to this, Marcia.
deer out, but I mean, we're looking at issues, we've had some issues, of course, I don't know if you know about, but our place got broken into, and they crashed the place evidently.
Yeah.
I don't know who did it, but, we are having issues with that type of thing, and for this location, I don't think we need to see that place, destroyed or just made looking crappy on the main street of Bellas Falls. That's my own opinion. I'm not against community garden, but I don't particularly care for this particular location.
Yeah. No, it's, the design is gonna require input from many people, the town, the schools, obviously the folks like Marcia who know how to coordinate the community garden. So again, this is going to be a extensive process. That's why we'd like to kind of get the thumbs up now so that we can start to do it and do it right. So, the property's going to still belong to the town. So the town's really going to retain control over what's going on there. So again, everything's going to be done right.
Okay, you also mentioned here, you want the town to supply the water, sewer, and power. Why would you need sewer? The other question to that is, water and sewer is a village issue, it's not something, they have the water and sewer controls. They're gonna be looking at meters and all this malarkey that goes along with it, so they can.
And that's really what we're looking for, just the basic requirements to make that lot functionable. So whether sewer is necessary, probably not. But I think that's actually already there. But it's really just, the thought was the town deliver that lot to us in a functioning manner. So that's probably more of the power of the water. Obviously, we're gonna cover the expenses of those, but, you know, it's gonna be the town's property, so deliver it, you know, free of any contaminants, and basically in a ready-to-go state.
Yeah, the connections to water and sewer is something the village will have to deal with, I imagine. But the power, that's stuff that we don't have money in the, we haven't planned for this in the budget
No,
for our funds, so,
we hadn't programmed any more improvements beyond just what we've done with the demo and the grading,
that was all under the contract.
all under the contract.
Okay. Gary,
Yeah, so, just, for the town to deliver that free of contaminants, we have not pursued any type of phase 1 environmental site assessment, which would make a recommendation for phase 2 testing to determine any of those pieces.
So,
That could be done, but it would take time.
time and money, right.
are you saying that we should do that before we agree to this lease?
I'm not making any comment on that, no, just that we can't say that we're delivering it free of contaminants without doing the environmental work to be able to say that.
How do you feel about that, Mike?
You know, if we're gonna be planting vegetables and things like that, I think we've gotta make sure that that's squared away. I mean, I think the reality is that kind of, anybody who's gonna wanna buy that lot is probably gonna require some kind of study on the land, so whether that's something that, you know, is gonna be driven by what we're doing, but again, this is all the kind of things that, as we go through the process of designing and planning, that we haven't delved into yet because we didn't want to put the time and effort into it if the town wasn't on board.
Right.
So, you know,
You don't think that raised beds could take care of that, Karen?
Marsha, you're the expert. What are your thoughts in terms of?
It's conceivable, you'd have to, but the raised bed would be in the
Pardon me,
name
Scott?
if you had it.
Yeah, hang on a
If you
minute,
had a
Rick.
barrier.
I'm on the, I actually, I got into another way, you just admitted me to the meeting, I think
Okay, Rick says he's in, so, all
Trying to admit him now.
right,
I. Okay,
I'm
good.
sorry.
I think we got you, Rick. Yeah, you're on. Hang on.
So, your thoughts in terms of what a raised bed help us from the standpoint of separating us from any kind of contamination issues or?
Not really. No, it would probably reduce we wouldn't be using the native soil, but we're gonna have to build soil one way or the other. But, you know, roots go down.
Right, I know, I was involved in school gardens and things in Baltimore, Maryland, and there was a lot of contaminants down in the harbor area there, a lot. And they were successful doing raised beds in some of the.
They raised off the surface.
No, they were on the surface, but they were, you know, about this thick of soil. So, I mean, I don't know, I just know that has been done, now I don't know if it was done properly.
I think it would probably work just for annual vegetables if you wanted to have.
Yeah.
Like root perennials or something like that, it might be,
Be a different matter.
yeah, it'd be like that. So it would really, what you can do.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna need to bring in soil there, no matter what.
No question.
Yeah.
Gary,
Yeah, so just, I was bringing it up just to say we can't commit that it's delivered free of contaminants, but it's not an industrial site. The building was there since 1834, so there wasn't dry cleaner there. There's not any indication that it's a real problem, but as you said, if the town was gonna sell it, that work would be, there would be a phase 1 before purchase and sale closed, and then it would be up to the buyer, who's then protected liability to do the cleanup. So just for what it's worth, I don't believe it's a high-risk property and raised beds. There were some raised beds there that the neighborhood had been using. I've said this before, and I think that group, the Community Garden Collaborative, was testing the soil, sending it for nutrition for growing and stuff to the lab, so.
I'm just trying to figure out if this is a deal breaker or not. You know?
No, I don't think.
I wouldn't think so either, but again, we gotta do our homework and answer all these questions.
Yeah, we got a sort of a chicken and egg kind of thing, though, before you
Yeah.
guys put so much energy, and you wanna know if we're gonna lease it to you,
Right,
and we wanna know what's involved, or, you know, with leasing it to you.
right,
you know?
right.
So it's just kind of sort that out and figure out what we can do to make it happen. I can't see any good reason not to do this.
Yeah.
I haven't heard one yet, I don't know if anybody has one.
Anyone else have any questions on?
No, just there was concerns raised about traffic being that close and whether, I mean, in the landscape design, I'm sure you'll consider that of some kind of way of blocking fumes coming from traffic that might be at that stop sign, through hedges or something that might
Yeah, I
help
thought
protect
about, I
that.
thought quite a bit about that objection at the last meeting, and when I go online and look at community gardens all over the country, you often see streets right beside them, so I don't think it's a significant issue.
You
I
can
think
see some of the
it's-
gardens I've planted in
Yeah.
Baltimore City.
I mean, I think it's something that a landscape designer that you're working with will help you work around that to make it,
Which is Scott.
yeah.
Slenderly, who's here.
Right.
And I don't know, Scott, if you have any thoughts. Actually, Scott, I thought that the town was looking into doing solar there. Chuck had mentioned something about you guys were studying the intersection from the standpoint of doing some things that might slow the traffic down in that area.
Yeah, there's a grant right now, we have a Transportation Alternatives Grant, which is studying that Atkinson School Street and that entire intersection. We also, we're working with the school district, they bought the rapid flashing pedestrian crossing signals that we're looking to see what that would make sense to install, to try to enhance some of the visibility of the crossing. And one location that people have said would make the most sense is keeping it on that northern border, which would then be on the same side as the middle school. So that if you had a signalized crossing there, that would make the most sense, and kids would stay on one sidewalk down from middle school, across that, Atkinson, and be able to go to the other side of the street, so. It shouldn't impact too much on what's happening there from sight distance and other, types of activity.
But again, from the standpoint of the design, obviously if they're gonna be students coming from the middle school down there or from the elementary school through the side of the lot, I mean, that's something we're gonna have to incorporate into the design in terms of protecting, that corner lot from traffic and any kind of racing through there. And that should be something that we incorporate into, whether it's a stone wall on Atkinson Street or something that would protect not just students, but anybody that's working in that spot.
Yeah, I'm sure Scott has probably plenty of ideas of way you can design landscape that attracts people and makes them slow down in a way that, that will help with that. I think the only thing you might find with contaminants is possibly lead paint chips that were there in the soil, but I'm sure that can be pretty readily remedied.
I mean, I've got to believe with bringing, soil in there that we're going to try to grow things, and we're going to be going down a ways to take out what's there and anything that is left over from the demolition, just to have sort of that will, produce. So I think there's going to be some natural, removal of whatever the top. I drive by now and it's just pretty much a dust. It does not look like, soil that's going to grow anything.
You can grow anything there.
So I think that, we're going to be probably going down a bit. I don't know, Marshall or Scott, if you have any thoughts in terms of what we might naturally, whether we then do expands on top of that, or, you know, what are your thoughts? Yeah, I know you don't have design, we really have not, you know, pushed the issue here.
No, I can address a couple of the comments. In terms of contamination, I'm not gonna say who would pay for it, but it is important to know whether the site's contaminated, and I agree with you if it is. My guess would be it'd be lead, but, often what will happen is the site will be capped. So when we worked on Saxon River Park, which was heavily contaminated, there's just a series of different ways that you can cap the soil, and the idea is that you're making sure the public doesn't come in contact with the contaminants. So that may be actually like raising the elevation above what's there, on raised beds or other ways. But you could also move material around the site, so it doesn't necessarily just have to go only up. In terms of sight lines and privacy and fumes, kind of screening or definition or delineation of the park as viewed from the outside, and what the experience is inside will be kind of looked at and explored. If there's traffic studies going on, that would be a part. How it links with public infrastructure would also be looked at. And if the project's done well, it's the complexity and kind of the multidisciplinary nature of this type of project is why it really will work well for the program that Mike's envisioned in terms of including kids in multiple disciplines. And it's a great site for it. That, I think the comments the last meeting, which I watched on Zoom, sorry, about it would be great to have infill and another building go back. I think that's really a valid point. You know, a lot of historic district sites in urban areas, whereas the buildings burn or fall down or are taken down, you have kind of these missing teeth. You know, the UNA's building, I would say, is one of those sites. Like, you gotta put a building back. It wouldn't be appropriate to make that space a park. But that building has been so, that site has been so unique with that structure, which is so different than everything around it. To me, the proximity of that site to the schools, and then also those houses around it, if the project's done well, and you take the time to look at all the various components and come up with a design that integrates all of these different facets, ideas, and concepts, I think you'll have really a jewel that will raise the real estate values of all the properties within walking distance. It'll be something, if you're looking for an apartment to rent or a house to buy, you can say, oh, the kids can walk to the schools, but they can also go to the park. Or, oh, if we're having a little picnic, we can go to the park. And so I think that site's different than the UNA's site. In terms of design details, it's way too early to discuss that because these projects have to come from the community. It's not just that the town owns the site, but it's important that as many people as have ideas can have a chance to speak and kind of weigh in. And that's important in terms of democracy, but it's also important to teach the students that are interested in this type of work, like, this is what this work is. Like, in the end, you might have like a design detail of a planter that looks fun on Instagram, but that's all the way at the end, you know? So that's kind of my 2 cents. I think a lot of the technical worries and problems that you're voicing are important, but I think the main focus of tonight's meeting, if I understand it, is like, will the town back the general idea? And I think it's a great idea for the space, given the intersection site, the proximity to the schools, and its relationship within walking distance of really dozens, if not 100 houses. I mean, I don't know how many people live within walking distance of that intersection, but quite a lot.
The traffic situation, you mentioned people coming in, of course, school's not gonna be in session during the summer. So what are your thoughts on parking? It's kind of congested right there. You got Greater Falls Pharmacy that parks all their employees on the street. They don't allow them to park in the parking lot, their own parking lot, just the customers parking
Yeah, again, if
So-
that's something that the town wants to
there. And that's a
incorporate,
heavily traveled, with trucks, and that's a truck route now, that's where, hopefully they're all supposed to be going that way. There are a few that sneak through the square, but, they're not supposed to be.
I mean, I'm not sure how much parking we could add to the space without taking, significant chunk of the garden away or the park away from the planning, but that's something that the town wants to incorporate into the plan. I mean, I think we can factor that in. I think a lot of people are gonna be walking there, whether it's walking from the middle school or the elementary school. I don't think they're gonna be driving there to get involved with the garden.
And how much
Use that
parking-
For a bike rack.
Yeah, but that's it. How much parking would you anticipate needing there? Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, I know there's been some thoughts that the school could maybe use some more parking, and if that wanted to be incorporated into that space, I mean, we want to do what's in the best interest for the town. So, I mean, but I personally don't think parking is going to be I think a lot of people that are going to be coming there are going to be walking there or taking a bike, are going to basically be from or walking from the schools. So I think, wherever they're parking or taking a bus to get to the school is not going to change. The people are already there in that space.
Yeah, and I don't see parking as being.
The other thing, if you consider the alternate lot that the town also owns on Church Place,
I haven't, to be honest with you. We were kind of focused on this one because it's proximity to the elementary school.
the elementary school is just down the street, closer to this other lot than
Yeah.
the one currently.
Yeah.
And you're not having the traffic issues over there on Main Street.
Hadn't considered that, to be
And
honest with you.
that would be the same situation, power and water and sewer connection to it.
It doesn't have the sun exposure there at all. Talking, West Vestry.
I don't, is it as big? I don't think it's as big.
Right. What's that?
It's not the same size either. It's smaller.
It's a little smaller, yeah, but
No, I mean, I like the idea of leaving the sightline to the school, at least at this point in time.
the other question comes up is the maintenance of the lot as we're going down the road. Your landscaping, stuff like that, who's gonna be responsible for that? That's gonna be a town issue, there's money we have to allocate for that. I say, I'm not against community garden, I'm just not in favor of this site.
Well, my input is that I think that this is a super exciting project and I'd love to be part of it. I don't think that this is the spot that I would choose to put it. I don't think that it's the highest and best use of the site. Personally. But I love the project and I would very much like to be part of it anywhere that they go. But that being said, I'm not going to stand in anybody's way, if there's, a group that's got this far, and actually doing something, I'm never going to, shoot down a community project, so, but it's not what I would choose.
Where would you like them to put it? Like the project?
That's not something that I've considered. I mean, that's something that they would have to look at, So
Has anyone even, other than the school looking at a parking lot, has anyone expressed an interest in this site, considering construction costs are extremely high right now? And anyone else I suppose you can build a house there with some parking, an apartment building, but I don't know what else would fit into that site in the short term. I mean, 10 years, if it's a 10-year lease, we can look at this in 10 years, or we can even, I suppose you can even put in there something shorter. If someone's gonna offer the town a huge amount of money for that spot 5 years from now, and maybe we could go back, put that as part of the condition is,
5 years, at least we know.
yeah,
What do you think would be the highest and best use of that property?
I would like, and this is only conceptual, I mean, it would probably take a few years before this would happen. But ideally, I would like to see a larger structure there, something that fills in and defines that corner. So I think that in a village setting like this, when you start breaking down those corners, you start to lose the definition of the streetscape. And when you look down School Street, that's the focal point. And having an end point there, I think, is just important to the visual aspect of the appearance of the village. So I would love to see something that incorporated some housing, some mixed use, some use like a daycare facility is an idea that I've been put forward. So probably, let's say, a three-story building, attractively designed. It's probably not going to be a private project. It's probably going to be something, with subsidies, but with, just as an example, daycare facility on the ground floor, some kind of offices or nonprofits on the second floor, and 3 or 4 apartment units on the third.
4 units on one floor, boy, that's not.
Rick, you haven't heard from you out in the Never Land there. You want to chip in on this?
Thanks. I'm following the discussion closely. I agree with what Susan said, given construction costs and labor shortages and regulatory challenges. I think it's going to be a cold day in hell before anyone wants to build a structure on that on that piece of land. And I also support what Bonnie said in terms of this being a group of people who are idealistic and motivated and well organized, and also willing to pay the town more than I think would come to it from any other use of that piece of land. So I'm in support.
Yeah, and I don't think the two ideas are exclusive, because that could be something 10 years down the line that you're looking to, and it could be something the group could also get involved in. Start with this, and then you're into getting all of the pieces that have to be put together to develop a lot is also very educational, particularly for the high schools who may be going into the trades or into, I think you could do both.
Yeah.
I just don't see in the
I'm
short term we're going to see anyone.
And I'm not against that happening that way.
Yeah.
I'm just putting it out there that there are options, and I think that it could be viable. Maybe not this year, in 10 years, very possibly. I mean, if a couple of years ago, someone had, theorized about whether someone would have bought the Bellows Falls garage and paid money for the site and demolished the existing building to build a large structure on the site, would have said that that's impossible, but it is happening. So it's not out of the question that could work on that site.
And then a great place where daycare center would be on the Church Street lot, if anybody was interested in providing them with government funding.
And that's just a concept, there's lots of different possibilities. Just putting the idea out there, just to get people thinking that, maybe you do go for 10 years with the community garden, but then just, maybe just be open to the idea of changing the use of that site eventually.
Do we need a motion?
Given the history of community gardens, as far as I know it, they usually tend to start off with good intentions, and after 2 or 3 years, they kind of falter by the wayside. So, you start thinking about a 10-year lease, and if 2 years down the road, all of a sudden interest disappears from this community garden, the town is then still tied into a 10-year lease unless we change the terms of that lease to go either do a 2-year lease with the option to extend it yearly or by a certain amount of time. That way, if it doesn't materialize, and we lose the aspect of that lot, then, you know, the Tom's not tied into a 10-year lease.
I would just like to say that their proposal is a little bit more than just a community garden. I too have seen community gardens start off with a bang and everybody kind of loses interest. It's a little bit harder than they thought it was going to be. They start not taking care of their plots. I dealt with this down in Putney when I reworked the gardens down there at the Putney Central School. There had been a large, very large, almost an acre community garden that had just gone to total pot. And that does happen. However, it looks, according to their proposal, that they want to be tied in with the schools and really offer educational functions there, which is a little bit more, it's hard to organize a community garden. I was been in that role, and, you know, hey, Susie, you haven't weeded this in 2 months. It looks like a mess, you know, your stuff is going over into pathways. It's hard to keep everybody in place, but it looks like they have something in mind that's much more structured and purposeful than just offering little squares of land to people that might want to grow some broccoli. Just my experience.
So that being said, if the vote is positive, what's your timeline to get this going? I mean, you're looking at power, water, et cetera, et cetera. You mean somebody's gonna have to meet, or your group's gonna have to meet with the trustees, talk about the water and the sewer, if it's needed, and get approval from them. This town can't just hook it up. And then how's it gonna be operated? We don't need an open faucet there where everybody just comes in and it's a community watering hole. So that's another issue which you need to deal with.
We do at the community garden up on the hill is we have a lock on the standpipe. Right. So that it keeps people from using it. That's what we consider.
Peter, I have a question.
Go ahead, Rick.
Mike, I wanted to understand how the trades group would help young people, how this project, I mean, once the above the raised beds are built, what further construction would there be there that would provide learning opportunities for young people in town who want to enter the trades?
Yeah, and honestly, I think probably Marcia's one of the best folks to respond to that. Obviously, initially, we're going to have the design phase, and Scott has volunteered his organization to set up what's called job shadowing or internships, so students can be involved with the process of designing, and then obviously the construction phase, and Scott, you mentioned learning how to use a transit, and there's so many different opportunities. And obviously, once the garden is up and running, there's the management of the garden, any kind of advertising, any financial literacy involved with, selling the produce. Mark Debo's here also, who's from the school, and I've had conversations, and maybe Mark has also had conversations with folks at the middle school and at the elementary school that are looking to incorporate the garden into their classroom experience, including they have a program down at the elementary schools called Farm to Table, and they actually bring some of the food from the garden that they have, I think it's actually the middle school, into the kitchen at the elementary school, and the kids eat it. So it's, I think we're seeing a transition in the school system that's going to a kind of a learning-based, hands-on experience, starting all the way down at the kindergarten and the elementary school. Cheryl Charles is here, and she's doing a lot of work to try to incorporate that kind of approach into the education system across the. So I don't know if any folks want to chime in, but you're in a better position to kind of speak about how the schools utilize this opportunity to advance the curriculum.
Sir, I can speak from the high school level. So as a school counselor, in the 5 years that I've been in this community working with our students, I've really noticed that a traditional approach to education really is not what works for all students. We have students who physically have a hard time maintaining themselves within the building. And these are the students who often graduate from high school, if they're lucky, and they remain in our community. And what we're looking for is if these people are going to remain in our community and become community members here as adults, we want them to be invested. We want them to be involved in their community. And this is a really great opportunity for them to learn the skills that Mike had shared previously, and to take some pride within their community and pride in what they find interesting and move that forward. We have about 30 students right now, just within the last month, that have approached us or we have identified to set up job shadowing. And we are really trying to gauge their interest and then really scale that to support this effort. If there's an opportunity, if they're talking about advertising, if they're talking about anything to do with gardening, landscaping, anything like that, we're really trying to line them up for this opportunity. It would be really helpful if this was approved and we could move forward with that for these students, so that not only can they earn or identify a different pathway to high school graduation, but they can feel good about doing
Thank you. That detail's helpful.
Go ahead, Cheryl, did you want to add?
Sure, just from the high, I'm Cheryl Charles, and I serve on the supervisory union board, but also chair the Westminster board. And would say that we have a really active farm to school program in Westminster with a pretty vibrant school garden there, and we do produce food that's used in the food services program. One of the opportunities with this piece of land, the community garden idea, is really outdoor classroom, farm to school, even a small area for the little preschoolers that are taken care of at the Central Elementary School, so that they have some place to play and learn outdoors. You can think of even on a lot that size, kind of a variety of different rooms, for want of a better word to describe it. So really, to the point that you were making a little while ago, it's not just a community garden. That's a very important thing. But the instructional opportunities there, the teaching and learning opportunities that will really serve the kids in so many ways and the teachers is something that a lot of people are excited about. I've been meeting pretty often with Carrie Kennedy, the principal at the Central Elementary School, Jennifer Keenan, who runs the preschool program, and they and teachers there who've been doing the farm to school work really are excited about the possibilities. So, something.
Yeah, I would like to just add to that and expand on that. I did this work for years in Baltimore, in the inner city, where kids never saw even grass, right? I worked with teachers who incorporated the garden into their science classes, into their math classes. Kids started a little bean seed in a Dixie cup, and eventually we put them outside. They learned so much from this. These are really underserved, challenged children. I started working with third graders all the way up to teenagers. And I went every week to different schools. I went to every day to a different school and visited schools every week. This can be creatively brought into the curriculum in a way that is very, very effective. I just want to say I've seen it and I've done it.
This is truly an opportunity to think about a classroom without walls, a classroom outside of a building, a classroom that will meet the needs of all of our students in one way or another.
Okay, I think we've exhausted our discussion here, so there is a suggested motion.
I would like to move that we approve the BF Trades Community Garden proposal at 66 Atkinson Street, and we instruct staff to execute the 10-year lease agreement using the terms outlined in the BF Trades proposal.
We'll hear a second.
I second.
I'll second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion in short, please? We have quite a bit on the agenda tonight.
Do you want to put a clause in here about a 5-year renegotiation? Does
I
that
think
make
that's
people
part of
happier?
the lease agreement. I mean, I think when you get into discussions, they can, the town can.
But the motion says by their proposal.
The
so they
motion
just
says
want
I would
you-
say then I would add then, as agreeable to the town or something, put some clause in like that.
Rick, you got any suggestions on how to deal with this 10-year thing?
Sorry.
I mean, I think we can just put in there something that, I mean, we're not just accepting their proposal. The town has to work with them. What works with us, what works with them.
Okay. Is that an amendment?
That's an amendment.
All right, we need to vote on the amendment first and then the motion. So we have a second to the amendment.
I'll second the amendment.
All right, the amendment is that we will put some sort of a clause in working with the group and I assume the manager.
Yes.
Scott's trying to pay nothing. He's busy.
Letting you guys.
Well,
Work your
well,
way through.
you can assign somebody to do it. How's that? We'll let you off the hook, but they have to work with the staff. So to change the terms of the lease from a 10-year to some sort of a multi-year or year-to-year lease agreement, if that's agreeable with you people to work something out.
I think, we're gonna be flexible. We wanna make this work. We want the town to be happy with it. We're gonna figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, there have to be conditions of, if this whole process fails, you don't want to be stuck to a 10-year lease. If
Right.
we get, someone's gonna offer us $500,000 for it, which they won't, if they did, we wouldn't be able to get out of it. So there's gotta be some kind of language in there that allows for that.
When I presented this, I basically broke it down into tangibles and intangibles. You've heard a lot about the intangibles today. I don't think there's any debate on that. On the tangible side of things, the properties that abut this property on the grand list are quoted at about $7,000, the property value alone. So we're tabling $75,000, and that's significantly above, I believe, what you could secure for this piece of property. Nobody's gonna look at that piece of property and look at the lots around it that are assessed at under $7,000 and say, I'm gonna pay $75,000. So I think it's a very generous offer. And I think that actually, what I suggested was that we pay $75,000 up front. So if you look at that over time, that's over $100,000 that we're actually giving to the town, assuming, like a 3% interest rate, 3 to 4%, that's about $3,000 a year. That's about what you'd be receiving in taxes. Oh, by the way, at the end of the period, we still own the property. Somebody else doesn't own the property. So I think financially, it's an easy one.
Okay, so let's vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment would say aye. Aye. All those
Aye.
opposed? Nay. Amendment carries, so there will be some language you can work with the staff. So now we'll vote on the main motion to approve the trades community garden proposal. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
those opposed, nay. Nay. I'm voting against it for the location. So motion carries 4-1. So you got your work cut out for you.
Thank you, folks.
Okay, here Opera House Theatrical Lighting Enhancement Bid Award. There is quite a bit of information in your packet. I think it's the thickest part in there.
Yeah, there was a lot of detail, but I wanted to try to at least give you a narrative as we work through, because it's a large project and it has a lot of moving pieces to it, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody was comfortable as we went forward. So really, if you recall, we had a previous discussion about our cultural facilities grant, and there was some concern about how that project was moving forward. At that time, I explained to the board that there had been some concern about structural integrity of the actual Opera House facility and the roof there. We did engage a structural engineering firm They did come back and say to us, and I did just give you a brief piece of that information from them about where the stress points are in the roof and the fact that we're going to have to reduce weight in order to support any kind of a rigging or lighting or other type of system in that current facility. So with that in mind, that's where we came up with the placement. There's in the access ways, it was basically put together with plywood and 2x4s and building, you know, sort of a wooden walkway. And the proposal to reduce that weight and make this more structurally sound is to replace that with this aluminum system, which I had given you the specifications for. That project basically would be done with some of our, just our regular staff people. We're not looking to do a contractor to do that work outside of the proposal. So that would reduce some of the weights, take off some of the stress on the roof, and then enable you to then potentially look at this flight pipe system, which has an automatic raising and lowering. It has a, basically, if you look at the lights that are currently in the theater now, which they use for productions, the one that are on the stage areas, they are all a weighted system and rigging system, so somebody has to raise and lower those with ropes, and it's a little more prone to problems if somebody's not a experienced rigger. You can drop those lights, and if you don't have your weights appropriately set, you can also then have those the rigging and the lights be unstable. So with all those sort of concerns and the fact that this proposed lighting system goes above an audience, it was really decided that we needed to make sure we had a system that was more stable. So that's why you see this fairly expensive, but fairly, it's a type of an installation that's fairly common in theaters that are hosting live stage and other events. So it's a little more involved than what we had spent on the stage lighting itself. It does provide some options to then enhance productions. And one of the concerns that we had after we went through all of that information, we engaged the consultant, went through a whole host of on-site meetings, follow-up meetings, and received bids, was back to our partnership with RED in terms of, let's see if this is going to make sense from a fiscal standpoint before we make a recommendation to the select board in terms of programming of the actual space. It's a little difficult for me to come to you with a six-figure proposal if in fact we're not going to be programming significantly more live events in the space, which then have a higher sort of potential rate of return. Now, that gets into a larger conversation about where we are with our current audience support of our movies, how we're working on you know, Red's been a great partner on getting some of our advertising and some of our sponsorships and some of our events are more cost effective because of some of their work, which we've appreciated. But as you can see in the memo from Red, there's a sort of integrated ramping up of productions in order to sort of justify our continuing investment in that for this lighting system in particular. And then ultimately, there's still the other piece of this is we have a grant proposal, which, you know, is a $22,000, which is the original cultural facilities grant. So we did have a match for that. And then all of this is really potentially financially viable without impacting your tax rate or impacting your current budget because of the work that Gary did with the Shuttered Venue grant program, which has been very helpful. It has really offset a lot of our expenses in the first 18 plus months of operation. And so the revenues, if you recall, we had not programmed in the previous year any real offset to the Shuttered Venue money. So the monies that are coming in are basically free, so to speak, for you to use for this purpose, if that's in fact what you wanted to do. Long-term investment in the facility, and I know that 2006 is a long time ago, but that's when the most recent major improvement was done in the actual Opera House facility itself. We're still paying for some of that work, and I did incorporate, just for your information, the 3 remaining payments on that 20-year bond. So you can see that we have $162,000 due in November of 23, another 155 due in November of 24, and then a final payment of roughly 7,000, which closes out the entire obligation, and that's in 2025. So your investment here will not necessarily add to your long-term indebtedness if you wanted to do other work going forward, meaning roofs or other types of investment. You certainly would have the capability to do that. So it's sort of a long-winded introduction to a pretty substantial project, and I'm sure that there's questions about all sorts of aspects of this proposal, but I just wanted to sort of give that highlight, and then certainly open it up to.
So we're looking at 187,000 minus the $22,000 grant, which equals out to 165, as your figures say.
Yes,
So
of actual
how
town money.
are we paying for that?
That's going to come out of the revenues, from the existing revenues from the theater operations, which have been offset by the shuttered venue money. So if you looked at the spreadsheet and sort of the financial backing to this thing, Peter, we roughly, with the additional second tranche of shuttered venue grant money, will have received roughly $216,000 worth of federal support for the theater operation. In that same time period, we basically will have earned roughly $236,000 in actual revenue. So that's where you're going to get your $185,000 roughly to support the grant.
So we've already used 144,000 of that money up, the shuttered venue of the 216, which leaves the 72,000 to evidently apply towards this lighting system or expenses for the operation of the theater.
Well, we applied, remember, initially we applied for the 144. So that's the one set of funds. The second set is the 70,000, which is the second round. So all of that can be offset against the revenue, which is.
Because if you look at the sheet that's, I assume Charlie sent this in, this one here with the BFOH revenue
The
sheet.
green, that was actually reworked, was worked through. Charlie did the,
Charlie's
costs.
sheet doesn't make any sense to me. The numbers are all over the spot. There's no point. You don't know whether it's whole dollars and cents.
You mean this page, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I can't figure it out either.
And I couldn't
There's no
figure out,
comments.
but looking at this first one, 90% of the revenue that's generated there is through movies and concessions. You're looking at rental revenue and event revenue, it's only $29,000, $30,000 compared to 100, 200 some odd thousand there for the rest. And I realize they're projecting out there, but I just,
well, since
I
we've
guess
been,
as you said, it's a larger conversation down the road we gotta have whether we're gonna fund that operation or not, but.
right. I mean, most of that only came because, again, we've only had limited live event programming. I think we had a
Right.
couple of single night events and then one multi-day run with a live theater stage event.
Well,
So,
the pandemic was still going on up until just a couple months ago, right?
well, I would say June of 21, realistically, has been sort of what we've used as a demarcation for when people, that was sort of the end of the state of emergency. People started
Yeah,
slowly
well,
coming back, but it has not been,
not really.
The other thing too is that, with all the streaming going on now, that people, their attendance has been low at our movies anyway. I mean, you can pay $4.99 and stream it at home if you want, and sit at home. And,
well, nationally, definitely. the
and
movies
that's
are
not
down.
helping us. I mean, Charlie's admitted to that
Right.
effect, so.
Movie revenues are definitely down.
And so,
But if you look at the per event, for a live event, we get $525 in net, after expenses, after income. Our movies, we're getting $20. So, I mean, live events bring in the long run, more money. So if you have more live, I mean, we try to break even with the movies because we do it for public good, basically. Live events, we're not looking to necessarily make a huge income off the theater.
No,
We
I know
want to,
that.
we want to be in balance as much as we can and provide entertainment and also bring people into town to support our businesses. So, I mean, I think in order to increase our live events and to increase the quality of our live events, this lighting system will help, at least that's my view.
Well, I'm not opposed to the lighting system, I'm just trying to figure out the financials.
Right, and we're lucky that we have this, I mean, we're in this situation only because of that grant.
Otherwise, we would have to come back and say we got to use, right, either additional fund balance or go and take on additional debt, which is.
Could I offer some perspective? So I'm a big fan of Red. I went to the most recent live performance and it was about half full. That was the most popular night, was half full. And the lighting, I don't know whether we would have drawn a single more person if we'd had better lighting or worse lighting. I just don't see this as a factor in attracting people, whether we're going to have, I mean, the lighting that has been working there for performances for years and years. And I've been in those performances, some of them, and I've worked with David Stern, whom I admire greatly. But I just cannot justify 6 figures of our tax revenue, if this is coming out of the general fund, to do this lighting, which I don't think is really going to add one more dollar of ticket sales to any live event. I think the lighting there is excellent for the mid-sized town that we are.
I would say it's not going to bring in people to exist, it's going to attract other types of live events that look at our lighting system or look at our theater and say, no, it's just not meeting my quality. I'm not saying it's going to change, say, a production. It'll make it easier for the productions to not have to climb those big tall things. But I think it would potentially open it up to others who want better lighting for their shows.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I kind of think, looking at the current situation in the entertainment world and the future and the enormous investment Rockingham has in this opera house already. If we have this opportunity to upgrade our systems with the help of these grants that we've received, I think we'd be fools not to do it.
And I agree, if it was coming out of tax dollars, if it's coming out of our fund balance, then
Yeah.
no. But this is coming, I mean, we're in this situation because of this special grant we had, that,
Right.
I mean, we would have, if we didn't open up to theaters right now, we would just be sitting on this money because we wouldn't have any operating expenses.
Well, when I first looked at this, my first reaction was about the same as yours, Rick. I thought, this is way too expensive. How can we possibly even think about putting this money into this? But then I realized, because we have the shuttered venue grant funds, that is what is paying for the operation of the Opera House this year. So all the revenue that has come in is free and clear above what has already been covered by this grant. So we now have, all of that revenue is just there for us to decide how we want to invest it. And I think it makes good sense to invest that money back into the theater to help make it more viable in the future. If this was $185,000 out of the taxpayer's pocket, I would say absolutely not. They're absolutely not. There's no way you could consider doing that. But because this is above and beyond, it's already been offset by this grant. It just makes sense to reinvest it back into the facility so that the facility has a better chance of being able to support itself into the future.
And make that transition away from when nobody's going to a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Elijah.
Wait, one at a time, folks, please.
Go, Rick.
Good point, Elijah. I just would like to ask Gary, how much of the shuttered venue grant has already been allocated for work we've done?
144,000, Rick, we already spent on
No,
260.
so that's not true. I think that, like $4,000 was actually spent on something, so there's $210,000 that can be, less the 4,000, so 206,000 that can be applied to expenses, right up until June 30th of this year. So the expenses going back to, March 2020, but certainly even within this year, I mean, Alyssa ran all the numbers, the spreadsheet there shows it clearly that there's enough expenses that the $210,000 pays for. And then all of the revenues, like Elijah was saying, all of those are available for this project. And there's also, it's not just that the lights we have work, there's some things that are breaking. There's a patchwork of theater people putting up their own lights and towers and plugging into computer architecture that still works on a floppy drive. It's crashed a little bit. It's not. It's certainly not going to last a couple of years. Never mind, work for a couple of decades. And the thing that's exciting about Charlie's projections, I understand it can be hard to follow. He's including all the operational numbers so you can see that there's a net there, just with the base rent. But the exciting part is that 36 live shows a year in a few years' time. But in order to be able to do that, and I think you folks mentioned that too, it's the lighting system to be able to attract more live events, like the same quality that we've had there that have been selling out. To have that many when you're competing with Colonial Theater, Northern Stage, Latches, you have to be able to provide something decent. And I mean, the upgrades just, you can't run an architecture that we have. It's not gonna last.
It seems like it's a little bit of a thing too, right?
Here we go, let's, one at a time. We've got 3 people trying to talk at once and nobody makes any sense. So please, if we could kind of, everybody's jumping in at once. We're not going through a central point. So Rick.
All right. Thank you, Gary, for explaining that. That's very helpful. The sound system is what was the most troubling of all the live performances I've seen there. The thing that's really bad is the sound. And can any of this technology, any investment be made in sound, or is it all just lights?
I think it's all just lights we're talking right now.
Yeah, I don't think that this has any improvement, Rick, that I can see in the actual sound systems within the theater. This is all rigging, lighting, cabling to support digital controlling through this motherboard, and then other types of really sort of upgrades that will be able to then run more expensive and more intense digital productions that go into these new kind of touring companies. So that's really, I think, what this supports.
And I believe also.
Thank you very much, Scott. I'm out of town, so I didn't get the packet. So if these questions seem obvious, it's because all I have is the agenda in front of me. Thank you for that answer.
Gary, does the shuttered venues grant run their course?
Yes, there will be no
There won't
more
be any
lights.
more.
The
Okay, that's
210,000.
one question. All right. Elijah, you got to try to attempt something there.
Oh, no, I was just saying that I think also this would include just a communication system for the backstage people. That's something that I saw in here.
Yeah.
Bonnie, do you have something?
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking a question. It sounded like from this engineer's report and all, that we also have a little bit of a safety issue with the weight of what we have there now and our troubled roof.
Yes,
Isn't that true?
we do.
So it's also a safety issue to replace the old and heavy stuff we have there with this lightweight material, with this better system that's lighter, right?
Yeah, we have to reduce weight on the trusses in that ceiling.
Right.
But the lights don't have anything to do with that.
No, the lights do have something.
Well, it does hang, this system will attach to the steel supports, And then we'll have a motorized system, and there will be some weight, but it won't be significant. The real weight is to get rid of that wood access way and make it aluminum or lightweight catwalk type of system.
Structure stuff, that's why they're looking at this aluminum.
Right, I
Yeah,
understand that.
So the lighting doesn't really.
So the current lighting doesn't really add to the weight?
Most of the lighting's in the stage, and so there is some, but it's not as significant.
Okay.
Something like what you got up here, there's not much there.
And is that lighting being removed?
The stage lighting stays.
Lighting stays the same,
Yeah.
okay.
That's on its own system, I understand.
It is.
You know,
It's a mechanical system.
Yeah.
It's more easily manipulated. It's not as tall, obviously, because the stage only has so much.
So do we know what the catwalks are costing?
I don't know exactly how many feet because we'll have to do it in stages, so we'll probably, at this point, I don't have a real number on exactly what that's gonna cost.
And the labor is gonna be supplied by
We're
our
gonna do it inside
our
our
own.
house.
people. Just get the numbers together here, that's all. Okay, Gary.
Yeah, so just the, don't want to discount Rick's comments, and the original cultural facilities, when that existing conditions was assessed, the sound was one of the issues, but it wasn't as, the reason this is an expensive problem is what you guys said, the lightweight in the ceiling and having lights, 100 feet in the air that are lowering and raising above an audience. And this system, it has computers in it. It's tracking the amount of weight that's lowering and raising. It has all these safety features built in it. Any part of it runs into anything, it immediately stops. It's a very sophisticated, well-designed system. And then the sound stuff was more like when a show comes, they can drop in a file that's, the music is all timed and cued to everything, and we don't have like the soundboard capability to do that, but it's not the really expensive engineered stuff. The soundboard is affordable for us to do in the regular annual. We can do that over time. This $210,000 opportunity is, this is the expensive piece, what you're doing here.
Thank you.
Rick, anything else before we get?
No, one quick question. Gary, you said it had to be spent by this June. That can't be right. Did I mishear that?
So the expenses that are eligible for the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant are expenses up through June 30th of this year. Yeah, and Scott and Alyssa went through all of the numbers, and those expenses are earned by June 30th easily.
So if we sign a contract to buy this stuff, it'll be here in time for us to get it paid by the grant by June 30th with the supply chain stuff that's going on now.
Here already. It's here already. They said they were gonna have it be reimbursable, but they actually sent us the money before, as soon as we were awarded it. So it just showed up in our bank account. I think because it was small enough, they didn't want to deal with the reimbursable paperwork. So a lot of these shuttered venue things were in the millions.
Thank you. My objections evaporate.
Well, we gotta ask questions, Rick. Okay, there is no suggested motion, so I don't see one anyway. So if someone wants to make a motion to approve the housing theater system improvement,
I would
which is
like
the
to,
lighting.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the improvements to the upper house lighting system and to award the.
If you look at the second page of my memo, the last sentence, I guess, is what I would have considered for a.
Award the theatrical lighting proposal RFP to ELS of Williston, Vermont for the price of $187,329.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve the lighting system for the theater. Any further questions, suggestions, or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor will say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, review highway budget status report. That's scary,
Yep, so
but
it's scary in a good way.
yeah, if we get the money.
If you feel good about our federal partners, then it's not so scary. I just wanted to highlight to the board where we are in the reimbursement process. We have submitted and are waiting on final payment on $605,000 worth of direct expenses from the July storms of last year. We still have one other category to reimburse, and that's called Category Z, and that's just administrative time that was spent in things like meetings and developing cost estimates and preparing all the detail. But that won't be huge amount, it's significant amounts of money. The big money has been spent in the highway fund, so that's what I wanted to bring to your attention. Currently, the feds are reimbursing at 90%. There is some state reimbursement. They have accepted our LHMP, so my understanding is that with that, we should be getting the balance of the state funding paid for as well. But until I get that approval from them, I held off on putting that into the memo, just so that you can see that right now, the federal portion is roughly $545,000. The additional state portion will be roughly another $60,000. So overall, it impacts our current position. If you look at our fund balances in the highway fund, you'll see we're overexpended by a total of $360,000. But anticipating those reimbursements, you'll see that we'll still have a healthy surplus and enough money to go forward and deal with all the projects and all the work that we're required to do. So it's just a timing issue at this point, but I wanted to bring it to the board's attention with the specific numbers, just so that everybody was comfortable as to where we are and what's happening. At this point, FEMA has not rejected any of our submissions, so all of these numbers are based on accepted project worksheets that have already gone through the state process and been approved, and now they're sitting at Region 1, which is the FEMA federal approval process, and at this point, nothing has been denied. So I'm just waiting for the federal bureaucracy to finalize their payment portion.
The state would be 5% of the remaining 10, is that right?
I believe on this event, they were going to do, if you had a full LHMP, I believe that they will do the full 10%.
A full 10%?
That's what I'm waiting for them to confirm.
Oh, okay, good.
And they did approve our LHMP very recently, so.
Okay, any questions? Rick, you all set?
All set.
Okay.
Because diesel prices are only going higher.
Well, I know that fuel prices are up, but I mean, the other thing that just scares me is the repair work. I mean, we're $60,000 over. We estimated 115 because that's what we usually run, and we're up to 172,000 now.
No, but we've always been over on that. We've always
Not that
underestimated.
much.
Pretty close. I think we went back, maybe not that much, but pretty close.
Yeah.
We've always,
It's a good
Too little
item,
amount,
I'll make a
that-
note so that maybe.
Well, basically, it's a 5 and 6 year old truck, so there's 3 of them on there that pretty much make up the biggest bang for the dollar, but
Right.
unfortunately. There's one in there for almost $28,000, that's that one that's going, if we ever get the new one.
I know.
There's 2 other ones in there to make up the other 29,000. Between the two there. That's the difference, we're way over.
Right.
Okay, let's move on to approve the 2022 summer meeting schedule. It's in your packet.
Couple of things, I just want to make sure, I know everybody's looking to schedule their summer holiday plans and other plans, and also we wanted to schedule the Meeting House event. So I just wanted to run this by the board, and if these dates work, we'll post it accordingly.
Could you read the dates to me? I didn't get the packet.
Yep, so the first one, Rick, is Tuesday, the 31st, which is the next tri-board meeting.
Right?
Then the regular board meeting for the select board would be the 7th of June.
Got it?
The July meeting would be the 12th of July. The
Okay.
August meeting would be at the Meeting House, that's August the 9th. And then The February meeting would be Tuesday, the 20th of February. And then after that, we move back to our regular schedule of 2 meetings a month.
So then
Okay.
for the 12th meeting, normally that's a trustees day, so they're gonna move to the 19th.
Yeah, I've requested that they move theirs too.
Okay.
Mostly so that everybody avoids the
You're gonna be here for
holidays.
the 19th, because I'm not,
19th of what?
July.
The 19th?
I mean,
thought it was
12.
12th? No, I will not be here the 12th, but I can call in.
Oh, I
I
can
mean,
come in by computer too, hopefully, if they still got the
yeah, I mean,
Wi-Fi.
I'll be in Vietnam possibly, but I can call in.
Yeah, the only reason I did that is try to avoid the meetings right after the holiday weekends. Are kind of difficult for folks that are trying to, plan those. 4th of July and Labor Day.
So no one has, the other question I had is, how come we're only having one meeting in September?
I think, given the amount of meetings we've already had with the tri-board meetings and our regular schedule, I think we can probably drop one more meeting to our summer schedule.
I mean, I have no objection to it, but I
Right.
mean, usually we have June, July, and August, and then we go back to 2 meetings scheduled in September.
Right.
We have a lot of meetings.
Well, it also follows. that
You got
Tuesday-
more meetings than we got, but that's your,
Well, we, the collective we, have a lot of meetings between the tri-board meetings, our regular select board meetings. I know some of you folks are doing other, committees and things. There's a
So I guess
lot of
for
meetings.
the 12th, I'm just wondering who's gonna run the meeting, I mean,
I could run it, but I won't,
Well-
probably won't.
Oh, you
I
won't
mean, I don't
be
even know if
going
I'm
well?
going for certain yet, but if I am, I can be on Zoom.
Okay.
I can be on Zoom too, but I mean, it's kind of weird running it from Zoom, but.
And can you remind me of the August date again, Scott?
The proposed
The 9th.
August date was the 9th.
The
They're all
9th, okay.
Tuesdays.
All right, good. Thank you.
And we could have that whole meeting on Zoom. I mean, Rockingham's one of the only towns in the state of Vermont that had in-person meetings through COVID. A lot of people are still doing
I know,
Zoom
surprisingly, there are
meetings.
still places that are not doing any implementation. Susan's
So-
right, I'm surprised at the numbers.
Yeah. We could do a full Zoom meeting for that meeting if there's
For
too many
July?
people traveling for July.
Sounds good to me.
But you
I mean, and then there's no
So-
worrying about who's in this room.
Right.
So, is everybody happy with what we got here, what's proposed?
Sounds good to me.
All right, mark your calendars.
So we're gonna do Zoom on July 12th?
Well, we can do it
We'll have Zoom set up, but it certainly.
But you
if
can
wants to
have,
run it
you know,
remotely or
this will
whatever,
be-
We'll make it. work.
Rick should be here, right, the 12th of July?
I'll be there on the 12th. I'll be there on the 12th. Yep.
Elijah will be here, so they have three sitting here,
The
and
important
then
one,
Sue and I will be just coming in off of Zoom, that's all.
the one that's important is the meeting house meeting, because obviously that's, a little difficult for.
Well, you said you can run the meeting through Zoom?
Sure.
Oh, okay, I thought you said you couldn't.
No, I didn't say that, I said I could. If Wi-Fi still, where I'm staying is still in vogue up there, should be, but. Okay, we're all set with that, let's go to NBRC grant application and authorize the resolution.
Thank you. So this is one of the many requested pieces of funding for our train station project. So Gary had laid out our sort of next step. So the Northern Borders piece, we did submit a sort of a pre-application. They approved our initial submission and asked us to do the full submission. And also at this point, we're going to be eligible for it potentially for $350,000 through this Northern Borders grant process. So with that, Gary wanted to just update you on the matrix in terms of where the funding stack sits so that everybody could sort of see where he's looking to allocate different pieces of money. And there are other pieces of this funding which are still waiting to work through. So with that in mind, I think this is a significant piece of our funding stack. And at this point, we're just asking you to approve our executing the full application through their portal, which is due June the 3rd. So we've been working on additional enhancements since we did the initial application.
Hey Gary, you wanna try and straighten us out on this stuff? I mean, I follow some of this, but I mean,
Yeah, so the idea is that we have a few phases to secure all of our funding. And we were advised, we talk with every funding source to get their sense of what they support. And Northern Borders in particular felt it was a good approach to look at mostly acquisition first and then come back to them for a larger chunk the following year. Once the town owns it and some of the, thornier planning issues like the NEPA process, leases with the state, once all those are squared away, folks will be a lot more comfortable with granting the larger funds. So for the acquisition for this phase, there's $350,000 we're looking to Northern Borders for, $200,000 from the Downtown Transportation Fund. The taxpayers have contributed $75,000 through town meeting vote, and USDA for a $50,000 grant. And there's a couple of nuances there. One is that those funding sources are all, none of them have been announced or awarded yet. So Northern Borders is going in, but when that application goes in, we won't know about the Downtown Transportation Fund. They canceled their April board meeting when they were supposed to make the decision, and so they now are not deciding until June. USDA is, they would normally be deciding April. They've just been calling, asking clarifying questions. They're not to the point of awarding yet. So we have the flexibility. We have plenty that we can do in the project with acquisition and doing some of the outside work. There's something like 4,000 square feet of bricks that need to be reworked. The masonry work, there's some foundation securing where a bulkhead door got wet and soaked in. There's so there's things that we could do or that we could put off. The brickwork, if we didn't get some funds, we could put it off. If there's enough money, we could do some window restoration through the folks that did the windows on Popolo, Woodstone, I think it's called. But anyway, so we have some flexibility. The important thing is that we have enough funds there and enough matching funds to do the acquisition. And so that's where we're at.
okay, well, trying to analyze this numbers you got thrown in. Down at the bottom, you have NBRC, 350,000 federal, but then you can look up the three NBRCs, actual, if you add up to 425,000. The ETF you show on there says $200,000 state, but up above it only adds up to 150, I think, 125. So I'm just trying to add those numbers so you can come out there, unless I'm missing something here.
So let's see, DTF, I see, you're right, that's comes in at 125,000. So
there's 75,000, we're getting another grant or something from DTF to make up the 200?
yeah, no, that's just a mistake on my part on this sources and uses table.
Okay, so same.
So we have enough work. So the window and door restoration, $135,000. The brickwork restoration, probably come closer to $50,000, but $75,000 allows some contingencies, like some of the bricks go down below the surface. They go right down under the pavement. And it's impossible to tell what's under there, how many layers of brick, what needs to be stripped out. So there's some contingencies in here. Foundation bulkhead repair will probably come in less than that. The canopies, the canopy estimate was $275,000, so likely the mistake, I mean, the money that I left out should be shown, like, that's the DTF contribution to canopies would be that 75,000. But at any rate, the idea is that by July, we have a picture of which grants we have. We know the acquisition has to happen, the foundation bulkhead door has to happen, and the other items we can do as funding allows, and it'll move us further along.
Okay, Rick, you don't have any, that's, you get your surprise when you get home or whatever.
Can't wait.
Okay,
Well,
comments?
I just have one question. When would we close on the building, Gary? July?
So that we would close probably October 1st, or there's some dependencies there. There has to be a notice to proceed from all of the funding sources before we purchase it, and the NEPA process has to be finished before you get a notice to proceed. So that's the National Environmental Policy Act, and it's the environmental review. So things like a bat species that's endangered that has their habitat on the island, that's going to come out in that. So so there's a lot of different dependencies in there, and they all work. They all come together nicely, but we can't pin. I would say that the acquisition would be by October 1st, but it's possible it could be earlier. The goal is to have a purchase option, but there's again, there's some complications there because you have so many different funding sources. Most of them allow you to have a purchase option. In fact, the Vermont Community Development Program requires it. But the Northern Borders grant, they don't allow a purchase option per se because it's a commitment of funds before you have your NEPA and notice to proceed. But we have we're not the only ones. There's some other applicants that are facing the same issue. And I think we all together found a solution with writing a contingent on the funding being awarded, so that it's not a commitment of funds unless they award the funds, which was their concern with pre-commitment. So it's just that they're all moving parts, and there's a lot of complications, so many funding sources, but you can get them to work together. It's just being flexible and paying attention and talking with all of the funders as you move along. They want to make things work. If they can, they do. They just each have their own rules, and some are more rigid than others.
Okay, well, thanks for all your work on this.
Hey, there's a motion there. Someone wants to make it.
I move to authorize Scott Pickup, municipal manager, to execute all NBRC investment documents that bind the town of Rockingham.
Here's a second.
A second.
Motion been made and seconded to authorize Scott Pickup, municipal manager, to execute all NBRC investment documents that bind the town of Rockingham to the bill. That being said, any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor would say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Resolution for corporate card authorization. I don't see anything here.
It was in the back, it was attached to the back of Gary's. Yeah, I think it was in there too, yeah. You didn't get a copy of that? You should have
You
seen
don't
it.
have this?
The colored sheet.
People do not
Not
back
you
in
can-
the.
Okay, there it is.
There
Yeah.
it is.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I thought that was involved with the.
No, all it is just an update. Since we obviously have a new finance director, we had to go back to our issuing bank and update our agreement so that she is part of this process. So
Did
it's
you
not,
get demoted here? It says you're the board clerk now?
you know,
Not the manager.
I know. Well, they want the clerk,
But
they
the
want the
second
clerk
side
to
says you're
attest.
the manager, so
I know.
it's just funny, because down below it says board clerk
Well,
again.
they wanted it tested by the clerk, so we have to do this resolution so that we can have it attested so that all of our corporate entity, all of our corporate folks are approved for the agreement. So it's really just adding Alyssa.
Okay, so you need a motion to authorize you to sign this commercial card resolution form.
Yes, please.
So moved.
Give me a second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to have the manager sign the business card, corporate card agreement authorization. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor would say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Are you still with us, Walter?
I'm right behind you.
No, you're first. Took us a while to get down the wall, but here we are. Okay, request for waiver of usage fee for Rockingham Meeting House. This is something you probably don't have in your packet, Rick. But what it is the Republican committee evidently has requested to waive the $150 per usage or per day fee what they'll do is they'll, in exchange for them giving us some labor to offset the amount of money they're trying to waive. So they're looking at 6 work days, I guess, and there's a description of what they're gonna do. Basically is to the swinging doors on the Hearst building. There's a couple of like barn doors that open up that kind of hinges are falling off and things that need to be done there. That some of the framing has to be repaired. Repair and support of the Hearst building floor. Foundation repair for the northerly shed and realignment with the Hearst building. Clearing brush along the hedgerow. Plumbing, straightening out basically of the granite fence post and wooden fence repair around the cemetery. So the town official or the coordinator should be, will be present according to what this says, so. That's basically what they're asking for. So that's the background, Rick.
It's a lot of free labor.
A lot of free labor, but according to the agreement that the Rockingham Meeting House or the Historic Preservation Commission says, that it's supposed to be used for educational purposes. It sounds like more like it's a Republican convention type situation to discuss Republican issues versus. So I don't know, I don't know if that's an educational, I guess I'd have to turn to Walter, who's behind me, to kind of enlighten us a little bit on what's proposed. Yeah, we're moving target, he's over here now, Rick.
Move to your right.
He keeps dodging the issue, you got it, Rick.
I can't
Walter,
see him.
you have the floor, sir.
One of the things that's kind of neat about the select board meetings here, or other meetings that I've attended here, is that it's flat, that people sit around a table, sit in circles and have conversations, as opposed to some kind of hierarchical structure where you're facing up to the select board and they're staring down at you. Part of the circle, you know. This issue came up when Bill Morse approached and asked if it's possible for the town Republican committee to use the meeting house. And of course, as any civic or any organization that might want to use the meeting house for a legitimate legal activity, we do have a process in place and policy statement in place to apply for the use of the meeting house. And there's a user fee involved. The user fee right now, by order of the select board, is $150 for 1 day use. So if you're a Rockingham resident, if you're from out of town, it's $250 a day. So I cannot, in my capacity as simply the coordinator of the Historic Preservation Commission, waive the fee that the select board has set. So what I recommended to Bill was that, because I understood that that's a pretty hefty, you have to pay for monthly meetings, that there are opportunities perhaps to do some of the, if you will, non-technical preservation work. And when I think about non-technical, there's something about working with 200-year-old clapboards that takes a certain skill set that they would not perhaps be engaged, but we have issues with the first house, for example, where the doors are starting to fall off in a very bad way. At times I get nervous when docents or when I go to open up the doors because they are not plumb at all and the hinges are not in good shape. The fence is literally, the fence that separates the meeting house from the graveyard. When I walked it a few weeks ago after the winter, there are more pieces of the pickets that have just fallen off because they're rotting. Those are all pretty expensive propositions to have to fix. And at this point, at least, we don't have the funding in place to do the work as it should be done. So I suggested to Bill maybe make a proposal and see if in exchange for the use for just a regular Republican committee meeting, some evenings or some afternoons, that that they could exchange labor and do some of that sort of non-technical conservation work. That's the background.
So don't you have to have a historical person that does the repair work, or we could endanger?
That's what that's that issue about the technical aspects. The fence has over the years has its own history where there, if you will, the stuff that's in the fence right now, the fabric in the fence is not 200 years old. Much of the fence is probably no more than 50 years old. It's not to say that you can just go in and put in a vinyl fence, but to do that kind of carpentry work does not require the same level of expertise that a conservative carpenter would need to have in order to do some of the clapboard work or some of the work on the frame of the main building itself. So I think we identified, if you will, the non-technical work, clearing a hedgerow, cutting back brush, working on a door, working on the fence, things that do not touch the really very fragile and very important 18th century fabric building itself.
So does that hold true for the hearse and the shed? The hearse building?
Yeah, it would, again, excuse me, as long as we don't go in there and put on vinyl siding. As long as we go in there and use, essentially just taking the doors off and fixing, we already have the specifications by an engineer as what needs to be done to fix the posts on which the doors are attached. In their wisdom, the original carpenters repurposed posts. And when they repurposed the posts, they positioned strategically the notches from the repurposed posts, the notches that were in the hand-hewn beams, right where they put the hinges. So we have hinges that are literally holding doors, and the hinges are sort of in midair almost. The fascia boards are carrying the weight of the doors and not the posts. So what would be required, and this has been spec'd out, and this is all within historic preservation specifications, take the doors off, fill in those notches with Dutchmen that could then hold the door, hold the doors more securely than what they are right now. Again, it's been spec'd out by by architectural historians. That was based on a study done back in 2018. Work that we started to do, but then the pandemic hit, and frankly, since the pandemic, I can't get anybody to come in. We could get to maybe 5 years. And by the way, the original estimate was to, for $2,000 to fix the doors, and now people are saying maybe $8,000 or more to fix the doors. So we're in this situation where we started a project that never really got very far along, COVID hit, and now we have an opportunity to have some of those.
Okay, Mike, you were at that meeting when this, resolution was presented or voted on. How do you stand on this? I don't want to throw it on you, but.
As far as their proposal to pay, to pay the fee with in-kind work, I think that sounds perfectly reasonable. I think the amount of work they'd be doing more than makes up for the waiving the fee. I think that's a fair exchange. I don't think we're not going to be out anything. We're not really waiving the fee. We're just we're getting work in kind to make that up. But as far as the reason for doing that, I wouldn't say that this is an educational thing. It's political, so it doesn't really fall under this specifically.
Yeah, that was my hang up, and talking with Scott, that was that hang up we were trying to figure out how to work that around. It's not educational, it's political, evidently.
Yeah.
Actually, if I could clarify that for you.
Could you?
Sure. The purpose of these monthly meetings is to vet out candidates that are running for office. We are open, we're the Republican Town Committee of Rockingham, but we are open to all. We don't really care about your political affiliation. We just want you to come interested, willing to learn something with an open mind. So our next meeting, and if you approve this proposal, will be this Saturday. We have 2 candidates. Both of them are running for representative. One person, both people are from Westminster. This forum, or this meet and greet, is open to everyone. It is to educate them, the voters, who is running for what office, and to have an opportunity for attendees to ask questions. And what better venue than the Rockingham Meeting House, where Rockingham, as a democratically run town, is formed. So I hope that clarifies that issue of education, because that's our main purpose, to bring awareness as to options in the election that is coming up in November. That's why this is for 6 months. 6 monthly meetings.
What is our precedent for having any kind of meeting at the meeting house that's political in nature?
As far as I know, I've never heard of one. This is the first time.
It's usually used for weddings and.
Yeah, weddings and, school trips that come up to go through the building and have the historical relevance explained to them as part of their schooling and stuff. College, same way. Or, visiting bus tours and things that come through. But not for a political gathering, so to speak, although Bill says that it's open to the public, but if I understand it, if you're not a Republican, you can't vote on the candidate anyway, so.
Yes, you can.
Actually, you can.
Vermont,
You can? Okay. I'm neither. I vote for whoever I feel like voting for.
In a
so.
primary, you can vote, if you're a Democrat, registered as a Democrat. You can vote in a Republican primary, but you can't vote in both of them.
Right. Okay.
So again, there's no limitation as to who comes through the door.
All right.
Our purpose is to educate the voting public.
Okay. So, you have any?
No, that answered my question, because that was my question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rick, any comment on that?
Well, it strikes me as something like what the League of Women Voters used to do, is have candidate forums. As long as no one is barred because of their political affiliation, I think it qualifies as a civic use of the structure.
Okay. So.
And there will, there was just another question, so you will, who will be there to oversee this trades person? You will be, okay.
And again, what I will have in hand are some of these engineering reports that we have, say what needs to be done, although some of these things, it's obvious, if you have a granite fence post like this, it's a matter simply of, with the proper equipment, digging it out and straightening it out. Because the weight of the fence, what's happened with the fence is that the weight of the wood, I mean, it's a very heavy fence, heavy wooden fence, it's literally just been pushing over, you can just see, looking down the line, it's more and more, it's falling down. And
Yeah, the pictures you had
setting it.
were revealing, that's for sure. There will be pictures of what they're attempting to do, Rick, in your packet.
Okay,
So you'll be able to see the
when I get back.
Descriptions.
Descriptions, I know, okay.
Okay, so, what's your pleasure, folks? Want to make a motion to let them go ahead or waive the fee, or?
I move that we allow the Republican Party to hold their event there, that in exchange for the labor that they have offered, that it will be supervised by Walter Wallace, who will be on site when the work is being done, or at least supervising the key aspects of it, and that the event be open to all citizens of Rockingham or in other towns with no qualification of political affiliation to attend.
Okay, was there a second? Motion made and seconded to approve the proposal for the Rockingham Meeting House and waive the fee of $150 per day, which they claim is going to be 6. Any further discussion? All those in favor would say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, let's get down, review orders and approve order bills and warrants. Your motion?
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Bill.
From a preservation point of view, thank you for considering this. It's really quite challenging to keep body and soul together with the house.
All right, now review order and approve orders, bills and warrants. Take a motion, please. Somebody?
Move to approve orders, bills, and warrants.
I'll second.
Motion's made and approved to review and approve orders, bills and warrants. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. Agenda items for the June 7, 2022 meeting. You got anything on their, cooking on their stove they'd like to get on the agenda? No, if you do, the manager's office is open for emails. Review agenda items for the joint board meeting. I think we talked about those a couple of weeks ago.
I'll just give you just a quick update. So we're gonna have the ARPA report and the report out from all the work that's been done through the public meetings. The area-wide plan, Jerry is working on coordination to have that reported out at that meeting as well. There'll be update on the tax sale, where we stand with that process. And also the fire equipment committee did have some items that we wanted to bring back to the larger board to discuss. So those are at least 4 of the items that I'm aware of for that meeting.
Quick question, Scott. Did we get that grant to study the fire departments?
No, we talked about it, Rick, and we're not sure of the timing on that, because the other grants are, the ones for equipment and USDA grants are looking to be awarded sometime in June or July, but I think they said that the other one might be until later in the fall.
Okay.
That they had applied for, so we're proceeding. Lots of work to do, but yeah, that one's going to be later.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, let's go to other business, Rick, seeing you're
Nothing, it's 2:20 a.m. here in Spain, so I'm about to check out.
That's what I was gonna say, I wanted to get you off of here quick.
I can imagine.
All right, Sue, anything?
Communicating fast.
Yeah, no, other than, at the transportation committee meeting, Wyndham Regional yesterday, we did, our bridge was the number one bridge that was in the most need of repair in Wyndham County.
So we're winners.
So we're winners for the worst bridge.
Yeah, we got something to talk about, right?
Whether the state
Any money
agrees,
come with it? No.
whether the state agrees is another question, but.
Well, there you go.
It's another step in the right
I have
direction.
nothing. Bonnie? Okay, nothing there, no executive session tonight, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
We're out of here. Thanks, Rick.